wanted to see kind of what is everybody's engagement with the campaign at this point? Like, are you at the point we've got some folks who are social media and they've got Twitter handles. How many folks in here, for example, have been doing forwarding for media materials, fundraising links? Can I get a show of hands? How many people in here have been kind of engaged that way? Okay. So because today's conversation, I actually want to kind of take this a little bit more local. Obviously, these are all important things we should be doing. We should be raising money. We should be forwarding opportunities that he's on TV. But I wanted to give a chance also for those of you who are listening on the live stream as well, that hopefully this will inspire a few ideas for how you can kind of tailor this sort of campaigning in the grassroots sense to your local community and your local culture. And one of the first tastes we got of this in looking at how can we expand the electorate in Silicon Valley and how can we really start attracting more voters into Pete's story. We saw this with the watch party. And I want to start off by a sort of personal example that we saw with the watch party advertisement. So something that we did is our volunteers kind of came together and said, we're going to go across the whole neighborhood in Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, San Francisco, and we're going to post flyers for our watch party. And I don't know how many people here are very familiar with the Santa Clara area, but there is a street called El Camino Real. Who here knows El Camino Real? All right, El Camino Real. Now, if you know El Camino Real, one of the big things about this street is the huge Asian population that is here. That is kind of the nexus for some of the best Asian eating, some of the best Asian grocery stores. It's a huge cultural hub. And so something we thought as an unconventional avenue is let's go to every major grocery store and every major Asian restaurant on this block, see who will post our flyer outside their shop window to advertise a watch party for this up and coming political candidate. And here's what we found. That out of the 10 Asian food stores and restaurants that we went to, all 10 of them were so happy to let us put our flyer on their front door, not even way in the back where, okay, it goes on the bulletin board and maybe you'll spot it. And there was something that happened that really stuck with me, which was that one of the shopkeepers said, gosh, no one has even thought to ever come to my store before for a political campaign. And he was the owner of a local Indian shop. And in fact, he was so happy that we came by. I stopped by a week later and he still had that flyer right at the front of his store. And I think that what's so valuable about that is that there are people in our community that do want to get involved. And maybe no one has knocked on their door before or shown up at their store to canvass or to politically campaign. And that's an electorate that we can reach out to. And when we look at the data, we start looking at how is Pete faring in California? What is the previous electoral data? The data is really supporting the fact that there is a huge chunk of this electorate that's still not being tapped into or that's not even figuring into the numbers. So right now, if we look at this Quinnipiac poll from Pete's numbers in California, and keep in mind this was taken on April 10th, so it was before his announcement, it's before the town hall, but it's still relevant because you still see Biden, Sanders, and Harris and Warren. Warren and Buttigieg kind of have a very close sort of mapping of their numbers in a lot of different polls. But for the most part, these three have kind of been leading in that front runner percentage. But what's really, really concerning is that 2% number right over here when we look at the Latino vote. And for anyone who's followed California politics, the Latino vote is such a critical component of gauging what kind of traction is a candidate going to have in California. Now, these numbers are not just saying that he's struggling with some name recognition, we got to get his name out there a little bit more. It is also telling a story of an electorate that is not being tapped by the campaign. Now, the other thing we got to look at are what are the odds for turnout in Silicon Valley and what are we looking at in terms of the numbers of people that actually go to the polls. So to take a small example, District 19, which basically includes parts of Santa Clara, San Jose, and Gilroy, to give you an idea, District 19 is a very deep blue district. On the Cooks County Partisan Index, which is basically, it's a rating tool to gauge kind of where political affiliations of a given district are. they rate us at about a 24 towards Democratic. And to give you a comparison, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's district is rated at 29. So this is a very deep blue district. Now, if we look at the 2017 census data, if we take the numbers that they've given us on how many people are born in the US in Santa Clara County in District 19, and how many people in this county are under the age of 18 and ineligible to vote, we can give within a reasonable estimate of taking the total number of people who are born in the US who are definitely citizens and the persons under 18 and maybe adjust it for folks that have now turned 18 and are eligible to vote in this cycle, that we're probably looking at a number of 435,000 people that are definitely eligible to vote. They are American born, they definitely have citizenship, they're over 18. And they're at least 18 and above. And I want you to remember that number because let's look at what happened in this historic midterm election where we had so-called record turnout. The total people that were registered to vote in District 19 was about 330,000 people. Now, if we look at the District 19 congressional race, the total number of people who voted was 220,000. So we're looking at about half that estimate we've come up with right here of people who are eligible to vote in the first place. Zoe Lofgren, who's been the longstanding Democratic representative of this district, she got 162,000 votes. So that gives you an idea also of the Democratic turnout, right? But this number should worry everybody. 2016 Democratic primary, the year that Bernie was running against Hillary. Zoe Lofgren got 107,000 votes. And generally 95% of the time, we see folks voting down the ballot, right? So somebody's going to the poll to vote for Bernie or Hillary, they're probably going down the ballot, they're looking at the Democrat on the ticket, they'll vote for Zoe Lofgren. And so 107,000 votes out of 435,000 people is indicative that there are people that are not going to the polls, that there are communities that are not being reached out to. And that's why the major strategy of Silicon Valley for Pete, and I hope every single grassroots organization, if you're listening, takes this into account. We've got to expand the electorate, and we've got to go and make sure that we don't have those shops anymore that tell us, gosh, no one even bothered to even come to my store. So how are we going to do this? Well, one of the strategies we've thought about is connect, coalesce, and convert. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about kind of what each of these three pillars are supposed to mean for our strategy. So let's talk about the first one, connect. So the first part of this is connecting with. Find other people in your community that also support Pete or that have an interest in Pete, or they tell you, oh, his media appearances was really, really impressive. Take them with you to a chapter meeting. Take them with you to a watch party. Take them with you to some kind of event, because the strength in numbers of these organizations that spread all across the country, showing that when a Silicon Valley for Pete or a San Francisco for Pete or an LA for Pete signs up to go and march at a Pride March, and they can come up with about 100 people who are ready to put on a shirt that shows a unified brand and go and show that kind of local support, the strength is in numbers. And so we've got to make other people who are Pete fans aware of our organizations. Now, the second part of this is kind of related. Connecting to independents, apolitical people, people who are just curious but they've never voted before, and connecting back with affiliated voters. I heard some people in here say that they are thinking of also supporting Elizabeth Warren. They're thinking of supporting Kamala Harris, or maybe some of you like Bernie as well. And it's important that we engage all of these people. It's important we even engage Republicans in this conversation. Believe it or not, the watch party that we had, it wasn't like every single person there was a person that was a supporter and a volunteer of Pete. I had a couple there that were Reagan Republicans. And they had told me that we have never seen anything like this in our area before. We've never been to an event like this before. And we were just curious that what's it like to go to a watch party and to be in a room where everybody's kind of watching for somebody to announce their run. And what it is you're giving somebody an avenue to kind of explore what your candidate is about in a way that is more personal, because Pete can't be everywhere, right? So we've got to connect. The first part of this is connect to potential people. Now, the second part of this that it leads to is coalesce. And there are two ways that we can coalesce. The first way is through direct advertising, right? We forward a Meet Pete event in your area, a watch party, a chapter meeting, a voter registration drive. So what we mean by this is literally a direct appeal to, here's our candidate, and these are the reasons why you should vote for him, and these are the reasons why you got to register to vote. But the second reason gets a little bit more interesting, which is that indirectly, we should try to find avenues that we can find demographics of voters who look like they could be likely to fold within Pete's basic message and his pitch. And I'll give an example of this. There are a lot of groups coming up on Twitter, like Coders for Pete, Geeks for Pete, Data for Pete. Now, what's that telling us? He has a certain appeal with a professional class in the technology space. And so what does it look like for indirect coalescing? Maybe it's that we're at an event about AI and the future of work. And you've got a bunch of people in the room that they're not there for a political event, but they could be potentially interested in the things Pete has to say about AI, automation, and universal basic income. So those are the kinds of avenues. If we set up tabling at that kind of event, if we are looking at charity events where it's some part of his policy platform, that some kind of a coat drive or a grocery store drive, those kind of initiatives are very indirect ways of appealing to a constituency that could fold within Pete's campaign messaging. So the last part of this, to make all of your effort count, once you've connected to people that are relevant to this base you're building, once you've coalesced them in an activity or in some kind of forum that gets them aware, the last part of it is converting. And this is where it's really important to make your effort count, because every single time you do an event in your area or you invite somebody, you've got to make sure you're taking down their event registration, who they are, what demographic they're from, what zip code did they come from, and you got to make sure to follow up with them. You have to send a thank you email right after the event. You got to tell them when the next event is going to be. You got to tell them what your organization is about and show them where they can find out more and where they can subscribe to another YouTube video that you're putting out there about policy positions that Pete has, or just fun content that we're putting out there. So it's about the following up, because after that, once you've taken all that data of who's coming up to the event, we're going to take all that data and analyze, where are the trends? Who are the neighborhoods we're not reaching out to? Who are the folks that are not showing up? Who is showing up? What demographic is that from? What zip codes are they from? Because all of that is leading to us doing strategic canvassing. We know that everybody here has limited time in a day to do text banking and door knocking and whatever, and so we want to get data-driven about it. And that's how you make your effort count. And then the final part of this is that it's not enough just to get somebody's word that they're going to vote for him. You got to follow up 1 week before the registration deadline for registering to vote. You got to follow up 1 week before early voting ends. You got to follow up the week before the election is going to happen in your state, right? So that's what we're going to do. And that's the big focus of our next push for the next quarter, is pushing voter registration, being data-driven, looking at basically how can we find avenues to coalesce, convert, connect with other people in our community. So how can you help, and how can you make your effort count? The first thing, and it's the simplest thing you can do, it's not partisan at all, register people to vote. Just tell people to register to vote. And tell them, if you can, to register Democrat. If you've got somebody in the neighborhood who's bought a new house, you better tell them to register to vote because they changed their address. If you've got someone in the neighborhood who's going in for their driving test, you better make sure you tell them to register to vote. There are all sorts of ways you can tell somebody to register to vote, but that's really important. We get as many people registered and we can get them to register Democrat, because the only way you can vote in the primary that's coming up for California is if you register as a Democrat. Okay? The next part of it, of course, is spreading the word. Bring your friends to events that we have, and always kind of engage with them at a level that it's not just about pitching Pete, it's about having a shared activity that you both do together. Okay, and then the last part of it is lending your talent. So we know that everyone in here is coming in with a lot of different talents. Some of you are great at graphic design. Some of you are great at website building. Some of you are great at doing video content. And everybody's got to tap into some part of their talent to pitch Pete, right? It could be that you start a YouTube channel and you take his news clips, kind of cut them up, and start giving perspectives on policy breakdowns. MeetPete.org is a great example of that. Somebody, as an open source project, literally took every major policy position and cut and spliced videos and connected that. Now that's a major example, right? But it could even be smaller examples, like when a Meet Pete event is in your neighborhood, sign up to volunteer, sign up to man, you know, the sign up desk or something, right? Bring a couple of friends, volunteer if you're a good event planner to find venues, you know, to host events. So those are all different ways in which you can be lending your talent and really making your volunteering effort count. And I just want to include this page on resources to know. One of the big projects we're going to be doing in this group is the Data District Mapping Project. And we're going to basically be looking at what is this electoral data from Santa Clara County? What are some of the rules surrounding voter registration? And that's really going to guide a lot of our effort in making canvassing very strategic for this whole group in the San Jose Palo Alto area. Okay, so now I just want to invite the other chapter leaders to come up, talk a little bit about what they're doing in their region, and I'd also like to invite Kevin to come and talk to us about his experience in South Bend. So why don't we start with, do you guys want to come up and talk about San Francisco?
I'm just making my bullet points, but that was a great presentation. Yeah, I'll come up. Just take a seat and have some pizza if you like. That was really good. I actually captured some of them. It's already been tweeted out. So, I'm my name's Joe, and we just got started in San Francisco. So for the watch party, I just put on Facebook and on Twitter, my own personal accounts, that we were going to be watching Pete make this historic making announcement. And we did it at a place called Manny's in San Francisco. It's a place where people come together. And we had about 125 people show up. And it just goes to show you there's a real hunger for decency and the type of message. And I think one of the things I love the most was people telling they want a candidate that brings the country together and across all our wonderful differences. So I think it's really important that we do that. So what we're doing in San Francisco, and I'm just one person, and I'm basically saying to my friends, oh, you're interested in Pete? Come tonight. You know, so if you're interested in Pete, help me organize the parade contingent for the San Francisco Pride. So that's what we're going to be doing. I think the most important thing is, just in addition to what you said, is the California primary is being brought up 3 months in advance of what it used to be. So it used to be in June. And basically in June, everything's pretty much decided unless it's a really close contest. So it's going to be March 3rd. Now, the Iowa caucuses are February 3rd. And then 2 weeks later in New Hampshire, you have the vote. So coming in the first month, you're going to have these huge states like Texas and California voting. So if Pete has a chance, he's got to do well in California and in Texas. Yeah. So, and we don't have much time. He looks like he could do very well in New Hampshire and Iowa and based on early voting, but he goes to the states that are more diverse, he really needs to do pretty well. So one of the biggest challenges we're facing in San Francisco is how can the different parts of San Francisco, which are equal parts, like a third white, a third Asian, and a third Hispanic, how can we get these communities activated around Pete? And the best way to do that is by reaching out to your own community. and getting people to do that. So a friend of mine who's Indian American says, Pete's got to be at this technology conference of Indian entrepreneurs. And he's like, he's got to speak. He's got to speak about their issues and all of a sudden. So he's working. I put him in touch with the campaign. We'll see what happens there. So one of the things I'm doing, given that I'm an LGBT activist, we are going to Pride in San Francisco, and that is June 30th. We're going to be coordinating with you guys. We'd like to have a large contingent at Pride. We're going to have Buddhists for Pete, Geeks for Pete, you name it. And what we want to show is lots of people, lots of different types of people are for Pete. Now, that's a strategic event because 1 million people come to that event. It is the largest event, public event in California, even bigger than the Rose Bowl Parade. So we're going to do that. We're also working on a variety of things, like the 150th anniversary of the Chinese. The Chinese largely made the railroad that went across the country. The 150th anniversary of that is on May 10th. We want Pete's going to be out here on that day. In addition to fundraising, we want him to speak to the Chinese American community about the importance of that, because that's really important. Most of their ancestors really worked on that railroad. So again, we're just trying to work out in really different ways. We haven't gotten into data. We're just building our database, and we're just trying to use as many volunteers as we can in San Francisco. We'll be coordinating with all you groups. My Twitter account is San Francisco for Pete. I've been tweeting this meeting, and so send that on. And I think using social media is a really efficient way of just letting people know that you're interested in them. And I have the Bernie Bros bomb me and tell me that I'm a traitor and all this stuff. And one of the great things is I appreciate their passion and I appreciate who they are, but I just don't respond. And I just ask them, I send them a direct message and I said, please be a little more polite. We're all on the same page. And I think one of the things that we can do is whoever the nominee is, we got to get behind that person. And until then, we want the best candidate to win. We'll see who that is. So that's what we're doing in San Francisco, or I'm doing in San Francisco. And if you have any ideas or want to work with us in any way, we want to support your events. We'll be coming down, we'll be going up north, we'll be going out east, and we'll be coming down south because we want to really, create the momentum. I want people to see on our Facebook page and our Twitter page that there's a lot of momentum for people.
And by the way, I really want us to at some point do get like a California website up and have people on a Google map be able to search, this is where I live, this is my nearest chapter, and really kind of get us to coalesce and, get those orgs going so that we all can kind of be on the same page of, hey, are you registered for Pride in Silicon Valley? I'm going to send some folks from San Francisco there, right? And the same goes for SF Pride as well. So, and I just want to really reiterate what you said about representation as well with inviting Pete to the Indian American Conference. I mean, I would just say as an Indian American myself that it is very powerful when, I'm just going to say this to the second gen kids in the room here, that people see an older voter who is maybe, looking at you and seeing that they see their own kids in you. And that when you come and tell them, I'm not, asking you to vote for Kamala or Bernie or Biden, I'm asking you to vote for Pete. And there's something about it that makes them stop and at least go and look up that CNN, town hall, or, just go and look into that candidate more. And I think that there's something very powerful when we make personal connections that way. So I'd really encourage, we need to get multilingual content out, right? Something Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did in her race is she had these campaign videos that were produced by Bengali and Indian immigrants in Hindi and Bengali and regional dialects, because in Jackson Heights, it's very similar to here. They have a huge population from South Asia. So I just think I would just like to reiterate, I mean, everything you're saying, especially, it's so true of San Francisco, right? It's such a diverse community of people.
Yeah, and one thing I would really just piggyback on what you said, Pete's father came from Malta. He's an immigrant. He understands what it's like. You know, I'm sure his skin crawls when he hears all this anti, you know, immigrant messaging that's going on. We need to tell that story. I really encourage you to read Pete's book because you can answer questions about him and his family. And you know, and some people have questions about Pete that I can't answer, and I just honestly say so. But in the kit that Pete's campaign put out, it's available on I think on Twitter, and you can download the resources. There's like 7 beliefs about, or 7 or 8 beliefs about the campaign, sort of codes of behavior. One of them is joy. One of them is truth. I can't remember the others, but read that. It's a really good grounding because it's, I mean, sometimes late at night I want to, you know, tweet back to someone who's going crazy on Pete saying something homophobic or whatever crazy, and I'm like, no, be like Pete. Be a decent, kind, forgiving person. Be firm.
Don't take the bait.
Don't take the bait.